save it, and it's not there as a deleted file or when the computer shut down. I was just checking. But I had some notes before, so just some, something that got added during the discussion. But just let me repeat the proposal and then kind of the 5 stages or 6 stages that I thought are important that we need to pay attention to and organize. So we wanted to create a Stevens Orlando Award to get students, new people into the monetary reform movement. So we have some funding for that. And now it's the organizational task to say, what do we want them to do? Who's our target audience? That's actually item number 1 that I have, target audience. And we came to the conclusion it should be undergrads and master students. So once they're in the postdoc stage, probably not of interest anymore. They're too invested in their career. So and for undergrads and master students, little prize money might go a long ways for them. That's a big incentive. Also, so I was just talking this morning, another thing that I remember from my experience when I won that award, we need to help them academically. And that is a way of supporting their career. So I remember when I came back and I told one of my professors that, hey, I won an award. And he was the dean at the moment. He rushed me into his office. I showed him, on the web photos and my certificate, and he wrote a press release basically to the newspapers. The student of his university won an award, that's a big deal. Whether he agreed with my topics or not, or with the statement, he didn't even care at that moment. One of his university won an international award, big deal. So you help the students academically by awarding them and recognizing them for the work they've done. Also on that front, later at the recognition end, so the association that put up this award, they worked with a publishing company, and the 2 winning articles or papers were published. So in today's publish or perish culture in academics, it's a big deal if you can basically enter your job search, your academic search, and say, hey, I've been published, I won an award, and I've been published here. So that's a big help, stepping stone for someone in this academic career, that they can start looking for a job later, joining a university when you already have a publication list. So that's on target audience and recognition at the end. So we talked about the tasks and contents and the topics and literature list, and that's going to be the main focus where we can spend most of the time. I want to jump a little bit ahead as we can cover the other 3 items that I have as well that we need to pay attention to. Second is marketing and communication. So we need to make it known that there is a competition out there, that we're creating, endowing this award. So we need some flyers, so someone with graphic design capabilities, and we need a website for that. So the flyer says more information can be found on this website. And we need to be reachable. There's an email, perhaps a phone number, and if somebody has a question, we need to be there, not an absent organization. And I think it could be a challenge already. We don't have full-time employees, full-time task, so that's a challenge. We need to be able to respond to questions, for instance. If we have a submission, we should acknowledge we received your submission, gonna take us 6 months' time to judge, you will hear from us later or something, you know, that it's not going into a void. So those are all things we need to consider, you know, once we embark on that, that we have those logistics in place. So I would say in terms of what we ask them to do is, in paper, I would say about 50 to 60 pages, long paper, but then they have time to develop a thesis to provide, you know, really have an argument, and then summary page, an abstract or executive summary of max 1 page, where they explain their thesis, and based on that summary page abstract, the paper would be distributed to the judging committee. So hopefully we'll have sufficient volunteers to participate, and I've got an idea how to increase that circle of potential judges. So based on the summary page, you would pick someone with that expertise in the area to send the paper. I would say we probably need 2 judges for each paper early on to weed out, you know, those people or papers don't make it to the second round, but then the finalists where we say, hey, we have 10 papers and we don't really know how to rank them, probably three people need to look at that. Here's the idea how we can enlist a circle of potential judges. In the topic section, in the literature section, we'll provide literature and questions. You know, here's some potential topics that we want to investigate, and we provide literature. So if we provide some papers from Professor Huber, from Professor Yamaguchi, they'd be happy probably to participate as well. You know, and then based on the abstract, we could probably say here, Professor Huber, here are 3 papers that are in your area. Why don't you have a look at it and judge that? So the more, you know, friendly and collaborators in this cause we have on the judging committee, go and have their papers listed as, you know, source of inspiration and research. That's
is that a conflict of interest if the judge is someone who's used their papers?
could be.
I didn't hear that suggestion you made, Jamie. Could
It's very confidential.
Is that a conflict of interest? Definitely, yeah, definitely. Oh, the guy has read me, he praises me, of course I like that, you know, so yeah, definitely. But is it a conflict of interest? Then we can say that we're selecting the students basically, awarding the award to them who come to the conclusion that we want to hear. Is that a conflict of interest? Sure, you know, so, but yeah.
At the same time, the students don't know who is on the jury. That is like,
Okay, strict
Yeah.
so they cannot write towards the
Yes.
the jurors.
Yeah, I did not know who was my juror basically in my award. I did not know that. You know, actually, it was based on was the Carl Walker Award, and he had died a few years before. You know, we provide Steven Zarlanga's book. You know, he had died. It's in honor of Steven Zarlanga. So we provide a few other sources as well to show, hey, this is not just one guy, several. You know, so I think it's entirely legitimate.
Question?
Mhm.
In your criteria for judging, and this may be yes or no, I'm curious, will you have a criteria about, besides being academically sound in every way and well-written, will you also ask the essayists to try to have it be accessible to lay people, which would help us in our efforts to explain things over the long run if things are more accessible? But you may or may not want to do that. Maybe that takes away credibility among the academics. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I don't want to punish anyone who gets a really technical paper in there.
Uh-huh.
On the other hand, communication is key. So
Uh-huh.
if we have a paper that we can use and that's accessible to lay people, that would get plus points. But I don't think I want to be, saying you really have to write it for layman's people, or you really have to have an academic tone, or if there are equations in there and graphs and highly academic, bring it on. We'd have some people to be able to judge that.
I can add something to that. So there are papers out there, research, about what papers do well. And I found research saying that looking at what papers are submitted and which ones are finally published. And the research was that though all papers that were looked at were technically all correct, they all supported their thesis and they got all the argumentation right and all their sources, etc. There was a very specific difference between the ones that were published and the ones that were not published. The ones that were published had a narrative structure,
Oh.
where you start out like, I don't know where I'm going, or, this was a, big question. You don't start right away with your conclusion, and then, build up your thing. It's more like a narrative, like a quest, or like a detective story. Because they found out that if you put something into a narrative structure, and I've done research myself about narrativity, it just catches the attention better. Because you can go along with the process of discovery. And you get involved emotionally also better into the whole process. So we can give, students, some of these papers suggested, like, you could do it in a narrative form because that will increase your publishing chances.
Thank you.
And it reminds me of my PhD thesis that I wrote. So I was working six years on a topic, and I basically did a computer simulation of a stock market. And Santa Fe Institute, artificial stock market model, and I criticized the original authors of that model, and I said, you guys made a mistake. If you change the learning algorithm, you come to completely different conclusions, or the dynamics of the market is completely different. Suddenly I got neoclassical results. So I was invited to the biggest conferences because those guys, we didn't like their results, chaos and complex systems and no nice provable mathematical theorem. So I kind of put the neoclassical work back into order. I was invited, could present there. Well, 3 or 4 months before submission date of my thesis, I realized those guys were right. They just didn't know it. They didn't understand their model correctly. At that moment, I had final proof, yep, there is emergent technical trading in the market, which is counterintuitive to neoclassical results, shouldn't. So I was able to analyze why this happens. It was a very technical problem. So I wanted to, basically, I went then into the machine learning literature, mutation algorithms, and evolution and biology, somewhere I had not intended to go at all. So I could show them, you guys were right. You had a gut feeling, but you measured the wrong thing. You did not understand your model correctly. But I was always in good terms with them. So the professor I critiqued, wrote me a glowing forward then and appreciation. We were in constant contact. So that it was a quest, basically. I said, my dissertation was, here, you look at that, and there's an indication that those guys are wrong. Here's a modification, I call those NESFI agents, Norman Antis SFI agents, So here's my improvement of the model. And I say, and here is, mine are doing way better, That was part 1 of my dissertation. And then I'm kind of saying, and by the way, if you look a little closer, here, there's some indication that my agents are wrong. Why? So tore it down argument, and I provided an analysis that the original authors were right, but they didn't know it, you know, so it was a much deeper understanding. It was the journey, basically. So, yeah, so it's very...
Exactly, yeah.
Mhm. You never know where you end up with your research, you know, you probably have to give that in the abstract, in the summary page, yeah, but the body of the paper could be the journey.
Yeah. In very short, he was saying, you're not writing about something, as if you already have the bird's eye view of the whole area of what you're doing and how you will explain it. It's more writing towards. And the towards what is still kind of open. When it's a quest, it is, you know, you will, if you're honest, etc., you know, you will say like, oh, that doesn't work, or that was not true, or, you know, I made a mistake, or he made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But, so you don't know in the end where you get. If you get at the end, yes, you can make a nice abstract that you can put at the beginning. But it's the writing towards and not the writing about.
Yeah, what I struggle about in the judging, potential judging of these submissions that we get is the potential variety of quality that we can get. So especially if we open it up to undergrads who've never written a paper, and they don't know about how to structure a paper and you know, building their own thesis and doing their own research. We might expect we're going to get a lot of paper. They read our articles, our literature, and they're just repeating it, which we might be happy about to read, and you know, maybe we have convinced somebody, but there is no original research in there at all. You know, they're just repeating it to please us. You know, they figured out the game. You know, oh, we are this art organization. We'll like to hear that, and they just repeat something. And then there might be some people who might be struggling, and they might come to some conclusion that we are not, 100%, comfortable with, or somehow, but we say, hey, it's interesting, but it's research, how do we judge that? I'd probably put a little bit more emphasis on the second guy, honest quest and struggling and, original research. So, but that's something on a case-by-case basis, I think, where we probably have different opinions among jurors.
But you can include something in the invitation about wanting something original in the paper too,
Yep.
so that everybody knows they're supposed to.
Yep.
I have another question about this project though. Yesterday you sort of invited the group to be supportive with your project in different ways, and I understood that somebody's gonna take down an address and distribute something, but it would be nice to have that a little clearer, how we're gonna be in touch with you, or you with us.
So I hope you have, do you have email addresses from participants? Can you communicate?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I would say that, I will condense that topic here and what we've discussed and come up with some verbs and say this is my first step at the text that we want to distribute. And then we'll send that out to the participants asking for feedback. And that we'll have that back and forth. And I think I asked someone, he came up with an idea, and I said, please write it down already. I was sitting in the back. So, but we'll keep in touch. So since Jamie has the contact, information of everybody here, so we will create an email list, and
Very cool.
so we'll send out something before the end of the year. I'll get my first step done.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay,
Well, my thinking, just from hearing this, is, and reaching a broader range of people, I think it really helps to have the academic material, and then you can simplify that to a point into summarising the main points of it, but then you can put it out to the people you want to reach, the NGOs, and then they can interpret it into their language, so that they know how to reach their people using their language. So just give them the information in a reasonably digestible form, and show that it's got the backup, the reference material to back it up, and then they can take it, you know, if they're alongside us, they can take it, put it into their language to reach their people themselves, rather than us trying to guess how to do that, because, you know, they know their audience better than we do. So I think that's probably a good way to go.
And then before we come back to the topics, so I had thrown out just economy and money, sustainable economy and money, history or the evolution of money, past, present, future, blockchain technology. And we had something about unemployment, future work, which I might put again maybe in sustainable economy. You know, we have ecological aspects and limits to growth, global warming, financial crisis. You know, financial crisis is an unemployment topic. But I always come back to think about the best communication strategy to various different stakeholder groups. And there might not be much of a difference between a layman who's interested and you know, struggles, and an economist who is in the, you know, does research and may have very detailed knowledge. But I think we have to start at one point with the realization we have a problem. So I want to bring up you know, a very frustrating episode from my work from last week, you know, where I, you know, was preparing a presentation to talk to different model stakeholders about monitoring of models. And I know I'm going to have a lot of pushback on some of those proposals. I got them to agree on something when I started. We have a problem. So I said, this is what we've done in the past, and this is what we've experienced, what we've observed, and everybody agreed we have a problem. That was my big success story. Yeah. Everything after that unraveled. So when I had, okay, here's 3 proposals, how we're going to tackle that, and I need an agreement, what are we going to do going forward? That's where it all unraveled. But I got it to the point, hey, we have a problem. And I think this is where what we need to keep in mind, that we need to start with the realization there is a problem that's coming from the monetary sphere. There's a problem that causes financial crises, that causes us to have an economic system and a financial system that is not sustainable in the long run, that does not serve the people. So we need to have that problem awareness. There may be some people who think we don't even have a problem. I can think of some of my professors, you know, the unlimited growth paradigm, you know, we have this much growth all the time, and qualitative versus quantitative growth. People who don't even acknowledge that there's a problem and everything is fine. But once you get them to agree that, yep, what we are observing in the world, you know, this instability of the economy, that we have recurrent financial crisis, not necessarily a recession, but financial crises. 2008 was a financial crisis. The next recession might be a simple recession that's not emanating from the financial sector, you know, but we have instability there, you know, and that is caused by the you know, monetary system. That's where we need to start. Yeah.
That was the same public feeling right before they passed the Federal Reserve law.
Yeah. So without awareness of a potential problem, there is not gonna be a change. And I know there is probably frustration from people who are, you know, in this area where we say we already have the solution, we have the NEAT Act, but it's that discussion, you know, little steps or jumping. You know, so when I look at the NEAT Act, it's a huge change of the system. you know, where I can't even grasp myself what it would all entail, and coming from within a bank. So I think of it, how would my job be affected in there? How would I explain it to my colleagues, you know? It's huge.
That's why, I had an idea I expressed the other day here, that we should study one of the major banks, like Chase Bank, and write this proposal. What would happen to Chase Bank if the money was, government issue money, and just go through, just exactly through it, so people see that, the world is not coming to an end.
Mhm. So the episode yesterday, Howard said it when he approached a local banker, CFO, and he said, "I want to talk about fractional reserve banking." Shut him up, basically.
That's Joe.
Joe, okay. So it's an indication, well, they have some problem awareness, but they don't want to talk about this, because they have, may have had bad experience in this type of discussions before, but it's, we need to start with realize, making them aware there is a problem, before we can start about the remedies, the proposed remedies. So in that competition and that award, I would say people come to the conclusion that there's a problem, and that's already a big achievement. Like then they start thinking about what are possible solutions to that. But that's where we need to start, problem awareness.
I have a question about, you want to target the economics departments or go further out there? Because I know that's thing that I've seen here in the United States. Non-economic academics are sometimes more open for monetary reform than the economists. That the joke is that if you become an economist, they just play with your mind because you're getting into all these paradigms and all this way of thinking, and you're in a box and you cannot really get out of it. And then I find sociologists, and actually two people that the Alliance has invited to do coffee house presentations, Tim DiMuzio and Richard Robbins, and they're anthropologists. But they're talking about, they have a really wide view of the world and how the system impacts the world, but they bring in a lot of other ideas, not just only economic ideas. So would you also expand then to any other department?
I would expand that. So I think the goal is to publicize it and among the econ departments, and say, we encourage submissions from students in the fields of economics, business administration, finance, sociology, maybe mention a few others, but we do not discourage any other to participate. So what I want is that we grow our own economists, basically. So yesterday after, I did not hear John Bongiovanni's talk on the day before or so, but I heard the title. So where are the economists when you need them? So the title then came up with the topic of this talk and saying, where are the economists when you need them, part 2. So we need to build alliances in the academic world. We need to grow them, and we need to basically get them on the path before they're set in their thinking, when they're still open to new ideas. That's why, probably important being undergraduates.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting development in the Netherlands at the University of Maastricht, which is in the south, next to Aachen. And there are economic students who've set up this organization called PINE. I don't know anymore what is the acronym of, but they are challenging their professors for the textbooks that they're using, because it doesn't include the new thinking about money. And so they organize little conferences and make it clear that they think that the material that they're working with is dated. At the same time, you know, people from the MMT group, they see an opening there, and they're better organized, so they're swooping in. And so, who are being invited for their sessions that they have? Kelton and, you know, other MMTers, and you know, and I'm trying to put my voice in there, but I'm not an economist myself, but I can debate at least. So we can extrapolate from that you know, there might be students here in the United States that we can you know, address. And I don't know what the student structure is in the United States about, you know, groups that are for social justice that we can, you know, address. Because there might be a same or a similar feeling among students saying like, hey, you know, the paradigms into which we are inducted are outdated. At least, you know, we can show that because of the research that has been done about bank money and bank money creation, and the different theories and the testing of the theories, etc. So I'm throwing that out. If anybody has anything, you know, sense of the student dynamics in that sense, because that might be a little opening to get into.
Yeah, well, I met some of the students that published a book about rethinking economics because they didn't agree with anything that Harvey thought. They had quite a strong movement in the Netherlands, well, reasonably strong, and there's other movements like a group of University of Manchester students in the UK formed a group, and they even got Andy Haldane, who's like the 2IC at the Bank of England, to write the forward to their book, basically agreeing with them that everything they're being taught in their courses is wrong. So yeah, so there is progress being made there, and I met some of their group were at the financial reform conference I was at in Brussels, and yeah, they totally get how the banking system and money system has been totally mistaught in the economics textbooks and courses. But yeah, and still there seems to be a huge inertia, so yeah.
But you have no first-hand knowledge about the United States?
I don't know about the United States, and even in the UK, there are student groups where they're focused on MMT. MMT are organised to have access into universities through the academics. Some academics are sympathetic with the students. I'm not sure in the US.
Here in the U.S., we don't even have money defined in the U.S. code anymore.
Louder, please, Mike.
We don't even.
Can we have a microphone going around with a rover?
Yeah, that's.
Rover group.
Here in
Turn it on.
Press mute.
here in the anyway, here in the U.S., we don't even have money defined in the U.S. code.
Yeah, that's another thing that the NEED Act does, is it defines money.
Yeah, that's another thing the NEED Act does, it defines money in the law for the first time.
Jill. Give Jill the microphone, okay? We're trying to get the microphone on.
How do you turn this thing on?
We're supposed to be on technical support. Press the mute button, hold it, and it'll go green.
Okay.
No.
Maybe.
There's another one in there.
Whoa.
Success.
There's a refractory period.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year after the conference, and I went up to Nick Tiedemann, Dr. Nick Tiedemann, because he said he thought I really hit some new nails on the head there, and so I asked him at the coffee break if he thought it would be possible for me to come and have a talk with one of his economics classes, one of his advanced economics classes. And his immediate response was, let me think about it. Well, I thought that was just a total putting me off, just let me think about it. So, but I got an email from him a little while later, and he arranged for me to meet the professor of the money and banking classes at Virginia Tech. and I had a conversation with him, and he did invite me to come and talk to his senior class. People who are just going to get, I guess, their degree in money and banking. I don't really know what they get, but my experience there. And I talked in two phases. One had to do with central banking. I did that. I used that William White interview from the Cobden Center, where he talked about how the central bankers of the world are kind of scared because their system ain't working. And then with Minsky, with regard to second part was with Minsky with regard to the failures of capitalism and the need to reform our institutions and our systems in order to meet the needs of what he called a progressive democracy. And in the course of my chat with the students, at some point I said, well, what we really will need to do then is to change the way that we create money now, from the way we create money now, or something like that. And I said, in passing, well, we all know, everybody in this is money and banking. I said, everybody in this class obviously knows where money comes from, right? And I think I saw one or two hands go up, and the rest of them kind of looked at the people next to them, and I asked Dr. Liu, who was the professor there, afterwards. I said, Dr. Liu, does that really mean that the money and banking class here, like the senior money and banking class at Virginia Tech, doesn't know where money comes from? And he said, that would be my conclusion. So the thing about the question of where are the economists, and really the need to pursue getting economists on our side is to me quite a huge question. What Hovert said about the opening in the Netherlands, where the students are saying, you're teaching us irrelevant, and wrong stuff, and that who do they get to bring in? The economists from the MMT, like for instance, I don't understand why those guys wouldn't be calling in Dr. Huber, quite frankly, Not that he's just up the road, but it's just that his way of thinking is, kind of like the preeminent of alternative views on how the money system works, So my observation is that so we got a long ways to go in order to get that ground, the basic student body captured, if you will, with the money issue, and I think that we acknowledge, at least I do, that this is a purposeful obstacle that's been placed in the way of students, and the money.
Willful negligence.
Bernard Laertier used to say that tell the story about Paul Krugman. That when he went to Princeton and he went in to speak to his academic advisor, and he asked him what he wanted to study, and Krugman said, "I want to study the monetary system," and that the advice that he got right then and there, was, well, you can do that if you don't want to publish, or you don't want to this, or you never want to be a tenured professor anywhere, you never want to be eligible for a Nobel Prize, go ahead and do that. So that's kind of like, to me, the bias in academia. Not that we have to, that we sort of have to acknowledge, that we sort of have to acknowledge that it's there. And that's why the idea of getting, the students at their most basic level, especially to acknowledge that there's a problem, that we want to have a alternative view of how to deal with it, or how to go about dealing with it, whatever. Now, if it's okay, because I have the mic, I'm just going to say this, okay?
He also has a mic.
Yeah, he has a stronger mic. He probably has the stronger mic. My other thought, of course, I think most people know that my other thought is to get a National Monetary Commission underway, to call for a National Monetary Commission to be underway, because these issues are so affect everything the way we have been talking about it here for the last 2 or 3 days. All of the great big issues that we're facing, and have that first how you're going to pay for it question. And without reform to the money system, we're not going to be able to engage those kinds of problems. So the idea that it's going to take us 2 years before we can get a sort of cadre of interested students is probably inevitable. I think we almost came to that conclusion yesterday. But on the other hand, there's a lot of other people out there in the world that are aware also that something's wrong, that could benefit from us having a move to a monetary commission. So before we break, I'm going to ask this body, this esteemed body, to support a call for a National Monetary Commission at the AMI conference this year. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Joe. Just briefly, you say that Professor Huber's view is alternative, but actually what he says is what the central banks say. So it's not. It's the problem is that, like at the IMNR conference in Stockholm, Michael Kumhoff in his presentation said he's surveyed 77 recent economics textbooks, and 76 out of the 77 were completely wrong on explaining how the money system worked, and the other one was only partially correct. And these are all. And when I was staying, I went to visit Sergio Turner in Boston with Bob a couple of years ago, and he showed me the textbooks that they're using, and some of them are only published like last year or the year before, and they're just ridiculously wrong. It's unbelievable. And John, I mean, it's not just economists either. Like John's been dealing with local people, as local bank managers and other people he's met, the bigger bank managers, and they cannot accept have they accepted it yet, John? That they're creating deposits?
No, but I'm scheduling a conference for later this month.
Right. So he's been working on this for years, just to try to get his local bank manager to understand what they're doing. It's a problem, yeah.
Michael's got the mic.
Oh, Mike's good.
Michael, yeah.
Oh, I guess I wonder how many of those textbooks were published by the monopolist Pearson. I guess that's one in the US and the UK. About the definition of money, just a little bit more on that. Money in the laws of the US is only implicitly defined, also along with quote currency and quote fiat unquote.
Right.
They only bother to define legal tender unquote, which is only for physical paper. Only legal tender paper and coins are defined. What we call bank money is, which is of course the vast majority of the M1 money supply, is not covered by any of these definitions. And as I said earlier, is the U.S. code doesn't even attempt to. They
Right.
kind of delegated it to the FDIC. That's what the decision going on.
Makes me think that if we put out of context to for a student to write about, we can just put out certain questions, list of questions. One of which can be like, where do you think money comes from? Let them do their research. Let them, this is, or what would be the best definition of money? They don't have to come, maybe right away with something totally new, produced by themselves.
John?
Yeah,
Just an idea.
I'd just like to say something about this business of student contact, because I've been trying to do this at my university and community for several years, And my first attempt was to go to the most well-known economist in the economics department at Ohio University, and he's well-known, spends a lot of time in Washington. He's very conservative. And I gave him a copy. I heard him talk one day, and he gave a talk about student debt. And at the end, I raised my hand and I said, well, isn't student debt a part of a larger problem of debt because all the money is created as debt? And he was all of a sudden silent, and he finally said, I'm agnostic on that issue.
Yeah.
Agnostic. So anyway, after I wrote my little pamphlet on why money creation is a central to most of our other problems, I gave him a copy. And he read it, and he came back to me and says, that's good. Now, I'm sure we didn't have a long conversation. You know, it's well written. I'm not sure I agree with you, kind of thing. But in any case, then I said, help me, get me an appointment to talk to your economics club. So I talked to the economics club, talked to them once, and they said, this is interesting. Will you come back next week? So I came back next week. And then I said, and we are planning to bring in a speaker. And the speaker was Dan Sullivan. So I invited, and they said, sure, we'll co-sponsor, which I needed because I wanted to use a university building. And so you have to get a student group to sponsor. So anyway, I also then I wanted to invite other groups, because as Goldberg pointed out, you got to approach people not just in economics, but who are interested in social justice. And in these so what I did was I wrote to the, this doesn't quite follow from social justice, but I wrote to the other student political groups on campus, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Libertarians, and the Socialists. And I asked them to co-sponsor this. Because Dan Sullivan is neat. He sort of crosses these boundaries in a unique way. So I thought this would be good. Well, by the time I had gotten an actual bio of Dan into the hands of the economics club, the economics student said, "Oh, this is too political. We're not going to sponsor this."
Yeah.
The Republicans didn't respond, the Democrats didn't respond, the Socialists didn't respond, but the Libertarians said, we'll co-sponsor. So Democracy Over Corporations and my local organization and this Libertarian organization co-sponsored this visit of Dan Sullivan. He gave 2 lectures, one on the campus and one to the community. And out of that came, I was invited back to the Libertarian group to talk to them about monetary reform. And I wangled an invitation to the Revolutionary Socialists. And they were interested in it as well. And we have strong support from a local peace and justice organization called the Appalachian Peace and Justice Organization. So there are these sort of peripheral things that need to be nourished. But I do think that this particular project has to be centered academically. And I've had 2 other experiences with the academics in the economics department. One of whom taught a course that I took a course for the first time in economics 2 years ago, macroeconomics. And I went up to him with my list of resources that I use in my monetary literacy group, about monetary reform sources, the standard ones we use for. And so he took them, and he actually looked at these, and he came back the next time, and he said, you know, this stuff is really interesting, as though he'd never heard about it. Right. Another faculty member whom I approached a number of years ago said he dismissed the whole thing. He's an economist, he's sort of liberal politically, but he